Prime Minister to attend tomorrow's Stormont talks, including historic meeting with Sinn Féin leader. The multi-million-pound live cattle export trade resumes after government intervention. And a controversial win for Monaghan in a marathon final at Croke Park. Good evening. The British Prime Minister Tony Blair will be in the north tomorrow. It's expected his schedule will include a visit to the Stormont talks, where he's due to have his first meeting with the Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams. The last time such talks took place was over 70 years ago, when Lloyd George met Michael Collins.
2 years ago, Sinn Féin were still shunned by British ministers, who refused to shake hands with them when their paths crossed. President Robinson, while refraining from political statements during her visits to the north, sought to include Republicans and Loyalists. So when the British Prime Minister Tony Blair comes to the north tomorrow, his meeting at Stormont with the Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams will mark another significant point in the peace process. It will be the first such encounter since Lloyd George met Michael Collins in 1921. The Northern Ireland office says Mr Blair will be visiting various parts of the north and meeting a wide range of people. It's expected he will hold brief meetings with each of the political parties involved in the Stormont talks. Aware of the sensitivity of unionists, Mr Blair will meet Mr Adams tomorrow behind closed doors with no cameras present. The Conservatives have said such an encounter would be premature, but some see it as yet another positive step to advance the peace process.
I think it's utterly important that people be encouraged by the presence, for example, on Monday, of the Prime Minister to remain in the talks, to continue with the talks until such a time as the talks conclude positively.
The UDP leader, Gary McMichael, who addressed a rally in Belfast marking the third anniversary of the Loyalist ceasefire, said tomorrow's handshake was not important, but he was more concerned about the lack of progress on the release of prisoners.
Such symbolism isn't important to us. What is important is that we get real movement on real issues within this process, and that the government stops tinkering around the edges, that it recognises that Loyalists have been on a ceasefire for 3 years, that there would not be a peace process if it wasn't for Loyalists.
Police clashed with Loyalist protesters trying to block a march by nationalists who were commemorating the execution of 3 United Irishmen 200 years ago. 2 police officers were injured and a plastic bullet was fired. Earlier, the marchers agreed to change their route to avoid Loyalist areas during the procession from Enniskillen to Rosslea. But on the Dublin Road outside Enniskillen, a crowd of around 300 Loyalists gathered and began to block cars. No arrests were made. The export of